Everybody, welcome back to the Healthy Sex Podcast. I'm in the studio today with the incredible Laura Chastain. This is episode 28. And Laura, you are my first in-person guest in a long time. So I'm so thankful to have you this morning.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's exciting because I have done podcasting and it is so much better in person.
Yes.
You can really connect on a different level. You don't have to have that little strange delay and remote.
All the telehealth.
So, yes. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Yes. So Laura is a local rock star here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it's actually your birthday week. So
it is.
Happy birthday
Thank
to you.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Y'all, I'm going to let Laura tell you a little bit about herself today. She's brilliant, has incredible training, but I don't want to mess that up. So Laura, will you just talk to us a little bit about your background and your training in medicine to start with?
Well, first of all, you're too kind because, we're lifelong learners and we have to look at it that way. So there's always something that I will not know. And you may ask me that today, and I will gladly tell you that.
Okay.
However, I have put a lot of time into my training. And so I've been a nurse practitioner for over 25 years now.
That's amazing.
It is because I don't feel like I should be that old yet.
You aren't.
Even though it's my birthday week.
You're a very young nurse practitioner.
And so I started out, in various roles, nephrology. I spent some time even in pharmaceutical sales, did some clinical consulting.
I didn't know that about you.
I did, but I
Very
always had a desire, and even in my interview for graduate school, I really wanted to work with women. And the reason behind that for me was because I knew the important role that women play in the lives of others.
Oh, my word.
I was raised by a single mom. I had two sisters, so we were an all-female family.
Wow.
So older sister, very influential in my life. Younger sister, very close to her. My mom, single mom. I knew the role that women needed to fulfill.
Amen.
And I wanted to be able to influence that in a positive direction so that women could be the best version of themselves at any age and any stage.
Wow.
And so I really wanted that and had that desire to work with women from the get-go.
Okay.
Didn't get to do it right off the bat. You don't get that job that you want right away,
Yep.
And so I started working in a traditional GYN practice probably about 20 years ago. Spent 15 years there seeing women of all different ages and stages of life.
Okay.
And so throughout that process, really became drawn to the perimenopausal female.
Oh, interesting.
The menopausal female.
Okay.
And not necessarily in a good sense. It was because we were not fulfilling the needs of those women.
Okay.
And so I would literally see a perimenopausal woman. She was so miserable, just with weight, body changes, and we're going to get into this. Mind, mood, irritability.
Just quality of life.
Things were
about
changing.
life.
She was not herself anymore.
Yeah.
But we had very little things to offer her because we had been told and taught through the Women's Health Initiative that hormones were harmful. And so I know we'll get into that further. But to fast forward, just really drawn to that area of study around women's health and then faced it myself, in my own body changing and my own life changing, and really went on a personal crusade to find the answer because I really wanted to know the truth. What is it about hormones that is so scary? What is it that makes us want to discourage or delay that treatment? And so in my pursuit of this for my own needs and my patients, found new data, and we have since seen a reframing of the Women's Health Initiative to more truthful data. And there's been, this shift in thinking throughout this field and in this space where women are now pursuing hormone optimization. And we're seeing more openness around it, which is very exciting.
Amen.
So that's kind of where, fast forward, I'm now with Optimize You and Rebellion Health and really focus on educating and empowering women. I work with men as well, but today, for the purpose of our talk, we'll really focus on the women to help them become the best versions of themselves.
Amen.
So getting to do those things that 25 years ago really had the heart to do, but now really getting to see that full circle moment.
Well, I am tickled to even have the privilege of having you on here because I know you just flew to Mexico and gave a TED Talk.
I did.
On what we're going to talk about today. So I am like low-key bragging on this podcast and my access to you because you're a bigger deal than you let on. I love your humility. I think I don't know. It just feels like the Lord's really blessing you with a ton of favor, and you're stewarding your gifts really well. So it just as a believer to a believer in the faith, it's just really beautiful to watch the Lord bless you, and the ministry that you have in science and medicine and health, but also the favor, like going to Mexico and giving a TED Talk. And I think you shared that the biotechnology that we're going to talk about today in the podcast, you're the first person in the first provider in Chattanooga. Is that right?
We're the first practice in Chattanooga to offer some of the testing around this, but really the focus is around ovarian longevity.
Okay. So this is, a little bit about myself. So I'm not going to disclose my age, but I'm getting older, and I have talked to you on and off for the last few years about reproductive health and perimenopause and menopause, and we've run labs, and I'm not in that yet. Thank you, Jesus.
Right.
But my concern has been I want to postpone that as long as possible. And so for the listeners today, this is going to be relevant to women in their 30s, 40s,
really
50s?
After 25, age 25 with the testing. Wow. But really, we're seeing younger and younger women develop comorbidities around ovarian aging. And so, again, we'll talk to that.
Yeah. But for the listener, most of you are going to be like, ovaries? What the heck? What's the big deal about ovaries? And that was my mindset when I started watching some of what you were sharing on your social media and some of the podcasts you were doing. Was like, what's the big deal about ovaries? So I'd love to kind of walk the listeners through, first of all, what are ovaries? Why are they important? Yeah. And then what's the big deal about them? Can we start there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So ovaries are an organ. In the female, what we call HPA axis or HPG axis. Men and women have a similar axis. It starts in the brain.
Okay.
The hypothalamus tells the pituitary,
another
gland, to release hormones, which are messengers to the ovaries or to the testicles in a man. In this case, of course, for females, the ovaries. And the ovaries have to respond. They have to say, I'm going to give you the estrogen you're asking for, the progesterone, the testosterone. That's where our hormones are released. Of course, we know that we ovulate monthly in a perfect world, and that's how we are able to conceive from reproductive.
So this is women in reproductive years. They should be ovulating every month.
Every month,
certain cadence, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And typically they'll follow that pattern through those childbearing years unless something interrupts that, like they get pregnant or they have an incredible amount of stress or they're training really hard with exercise.
Yes, the fitness world, yes.
Yes. Yep. And so
just for the listeners, because again, I've learned, a lot of people don't know what we think because we get so caught up in our discipline that we take for granted so we have 2 ovaries and every other month, like let's say that our bodies alternate, like releasing an egg.
Yes.
Is that right? Every other month. So my right ovary this month, left ovary next month. Right? So women's bodies should be alternating.
Yes.
Through reproductive years.
Yes. And you will have naturally some months that you may or may not ovulate. Those are called anovulatory months.
Okay.
So that can be common as well.
Interesting.
But it should not be a pattern. So we shouldn't see you go 3 months without a period.
Okay.
Periods are usually the sign that you've ovulated, but not always. Okay. And so sometimes you can have, like I said, an anovulatory month in there, and that can be normal.
Okay.
We just don't want to see that pattern start to take hold, and then we know ovulation is not consistent.
Gotcha.
So the big deal about ovaries, you asked me that, like what the ovary is, so we talked about that.
Yep.
The big deal about ovaries is that now the ovary is considered the pacemaker to a woman's health.
Really?
Yes, it
the pacemaker.
is. The pacemaker, just like our heart. It's setting the pace for the way we age.
Fascinating.
Yes. It's the first organ that we see aging in a female.
Is this a new discovery in health, in
I
sexual
would say
medicine?
It's recent that we are seeing more attention brought to it as we focus and see more focus around longevity for women.
Okay.
So historically, women live longer than men.
Yes.
The average age of death, if we think about a woman's death rate, is in her 80s.
Okay.
A man is in his 70s. But a woman lives in poorer health during that last decade of her life.
Okay.
So even though she's living longer, it's,
not as much of a quality of life.
No, we're thinking hip fractures, dementia, heart disease.
So bone health, cardiovascular health, brain health, all of that suffers?
Absolutely.
And that's because of?
Well, now we're seeing because of that shift in hormones that happens at midlife.
Gotcha.
That is being connected to a lot of later disease processes.
Wow.
And so heart disease is the leading cause of death in women above
heart
any
disease.
heart disease. above any other chronic condition.
Okay.
And so when we look at that change in estradiol level that happens when we lose ovarian function, then we are connecting that, and we see studies around heart health declining because estrogen is very anti-inflammatory. It's very heart protective. And so the whole issue around ovarian longevity is that the ovary is setting the pace for how we're going to age.
Okay, so let me slow you down. For again, trying to keep it real basic. So the ovaries help produce estrogen.
They do.
Okay, and there are 4 types of estrogen.
There are. We're going to talk primarily about estradiol.
Estradiol.
That's E2.
Okay, E2. And E2 is anti-inflammatory.
It's anti-inflammatory.
And so it protects the heart.
It protects the heart.
It's connected to estrogen receptors in the brain.
Yes.
Okay, so when we go into perimenopause or menopause and our body stops producing that, then all of these inflammatory diseases or cardiovascular issues or brain issues start to emerge because we don't have our protective mechanism in the estradiol anymore.
Right. And in perimenopause, which can last 4 to 10 years before true menopause, we see a chaotic expression of estradiol. 1 month it may look low, 1 month it may look high, and we don't always measure those at the right time to capture that. So we look for symptoms in women. We look to see, there are several symptoms correlated to that: brain fog, joint pain. We see changes in mood, sleep patterns, irregular periods. And so we know that something's not quite right. And so does she. She comes in saying, I don't feel like myself. Excuse me. And now that has been connected to perimenopause. That phrase, I don't feel like myself, is correlated to a perimenopausal time frame.
Okay. So, Laura, you and I before this podcast came up with kind of a skeleton of questions to keep us on track. So let's, for the listeners, can you delineate between the concept of health span versus lifespan? Because it sounds like you're already kind of talking about it.
We're already talking around that a little bit.
But
So
when you talk to a woman about her health span versus her lifespan, can you kind of delineate for the listeners what you mean by that?
So we think of lifespan as just how long you're going to live. So if we say the average age of death in a woman is, let's say, 82, then we're thinking, well, what is her health span? What's her health during that time?
So she may live that long.
She may live that long, but how healthy?
She's living?
Right. And so we're seeing health decline in those later years, and very correlated to mortality risk. Like if someone fractures a hip, then the 12 months following that, their mortality rate, so that means their rate of death is 25 to 50% higher.
Wow.
In that 12 months following.
Because of a broken hip?
Because of a broken hip.
Is that because of immobility and like lung
I think it's multiple,
stuff?
I think multiple factors, and hip fractures are, we talk about them like they're, everyday events, and they really are in that age group. I had to spend some time in the hospital with a family member in the ER, and during that 24 hours saw 3 elderly females come in with hip fractures.
Wow.
And, it's like...
So the idea is if I break my hip, then I'm immobilized. I'm laid up.
Yes.
So blood flow isn't what it needs to be.
We think about mobility, lung capacity, the ability to care for yourself, rehab facility most likely.
Gotcha.
And then, we see UTIs, things like that.
Yes.
There's a whole host of things
that happen as a result.
Right.
Okay.
And so, hip fractures are not anything that I want in myself or anyone that I love or take care of. And so we know now that, and we've known this because estradiol has the FDA indication for the prevention of osteoporosis.
Okay, so let's dumb that down. So what that means is estradiol helps prevent bone atrophy or degeneration of the bone.
The growth of bone, the quality of bone. And so
So conversely, just again to try and, I'm Socratic method and listeners appreciate this. So if I don't have enough estradiol, and I talk to my clients about this when they're using hormonal birth control, is it sets women's bones up to be more brittle. Throughout the lifespan. So if I have more brittle bones, I'm going to be much more vulnerable later in life to falls, to fractures.
Correct.
Okay. And so just quality of life in the day-to-day, lifting, carrying, moving things.
Jumping.
I'm much more vulnerable as a woman. Okay. Okay.
Things that you can do to prevent that would be things like lifting weights, eating protein, the jump training, those things.
So some impact.
Yes. But, we know that the first 5 years of menopause is when we lose the most bone
I didn't know
as a
that.
female.
Wow.
But it starts 2 years before the final period.
Really?
So we see periods change in perimenopause.
Okay.
Bone loss is already starting 2 years previous to the final period.
Wow.
So even before menopause, we see bones impacted. And we know that through looking at ovarian age, we can determine when is that bone loss happening? Do we need to? Yes. And
Can you walk us through how?
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we predict ovarian age in a new test.
Okay.
But through that, we can see, how close you are to menopause.
Okay.
And so we can know, where do we want to start looking at bone health? When do we want to order a DEXA scan?
Okay, so DEXA scan, if I wanted to look at my bone health, that would be the scan I would want to utilize?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
There's some other testing out there using bone ultrasound that shows quality of bone, but DEXA is pretty universally recognized as a good measure of bone health.
Okay.
And the problem that we have with DEXAs is a lot of times they aren't covered by insurance in our insurance-based system until you are mid-60s.
Which by then it's too late.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's already been some impact to the bone. If you think 2 years before your final missed period, average age of menopause.
Yes.
So let's back up. Average age of menopause when we have that final period is 51, 52.
Okay.
So if we're thinking late 40s, you're starting to experience some bone loss, but we can't look at that in an insurance-based system till the mid-60s.
Gotcha.
We've lost close to 20 years. Of bone impact. And so there is a window of opportunity for starting hormones.
Okay.
And that would be in those 5 to 10 years after that final period. And even some argue sooner based on ovarian aging. Okay. So, there are a lot of new ways that now we can intervene a little earlier. To look at this, the ovary is our pacemaker. The ovary is our biological, not only from a reproductive sense, but from a aging sense.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm tracking.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to know how my body is aging overall, you're telling me I'm going to want to look at the health of my ovaries first?
It is a great starting place. Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Okay, y'all, we're going to talk a little bit about that test in a minute. Laura, can we first start by talking about root level medicine versus ovarian health? I don't know if that's relevant or if...
Yeah, it's a little bit around what we've talked about. But, when we think about irregular periods, let's say a patient goes in to see their provider and they have irregular periods. Okay.
And that could be PCOS.
It could be PCOS. It could be stress, overtraining.
Yeah.
It's a signal to that female that something is off, whether that's, like we said, all those reasons, even endocrine disruptors, things like plastics, things like chemicals, fragrances, those things can impact our hormone health. Okay. And so it is very important that we dive down a little deeper and say, this isn't just irregular periods that we're going to give a birth control pill to.
Right.
To fix that cycle.
Right.
But we're going to look a little deeper and say, do we have an endocrine issue like PCOS, which is now PMOS?
Oh, interesting.
Which is polycystic metabolic ovarian syndrome.
Okay.
So, or polyendocrine. I'm sorry, polyendocrine. They changed that
name?
Because if you think polycystic ovarian syndrome was PCOS, so it looked like an ovary problem only, which it is. But it's even deeper. It's metabolic. So they changed that to polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. So in that name alone, we're seeing that shift to the focus being a root level cause. Okay. So then we can look at the metabolic changes or concerns with that patient and address those that often fix some of the ovarian issue.
What would some of those be?
As far as
what do you mean by metabolic issues that
fasting insulin, we might look at A1C. Because those are really the issue and the drivers behind a lot of PMOS. Okay. Is that they're not metabolizing insulin appropriately. Oh, okay. And so therefore there's more weight gain, there's less ovulation, there's higher testosterone levels. Yep. And so it impacts the metabolic health of that female. So she's going to be more prone to things like in the future, like diabetes.
Oh, wow.
Like heart disease. So we want to really try to impact and get her to ovulate regularly, because that's an issue in a lot of those patients is they don't have regular ovulation, therefore they have irregular periods. And so we want to try to restore regular ovulation so we can impact her metabolic health.
Okay, now the GLP-1 conversation, I know it's its own thing, but is that where GLP-1s are possibly helpful for some of those ladies?
They can be, absolutely. And I think that is one positive around GLP-1s that we really need to highlight, is that it helps to restore ovulation in a lot of those females.
Does it really?
It does.
That's amazing.
It does, because we're fixing the root level, which is the way that their body produces and their sensitivity towards their insulin. And so when we fix insulin levels or we fix that issue, then sometimes we can restore ovulation and therefore help their overall metabolic state.
Okay, so I feel like we could rabbit trail here. So
yes, we can.
If you're okay.
Yeah.
So you were saying earlier that there are more issues emerging for younger women. And what I have heard some of my clients share is that they're experiencing insulin resistance. Is that a diet issue? Is that an American...
It can be. It can also be genetic. It can be how we interact with our environment with the genes we have, so-called epigenetics.
Yes, I love that conversation. Yes.
It can be lifestyle, for sure. It can be our processed foods. So there's
in general, American women are experiencing more insulin resistance across the lifespan. Is that accurate? Does that
I would say that we identify it better. And I don't know the true number of incidents, the percent of incidents on that. We definitely see more PMOS. So that would be insulin resistance related.
Yes.
And we also know that as a female loses her estradiol, that she has more she's more likely to develop insulin resistance. So for instance, if someone starts through perimenopause, their estradiol is very insulin sensitive. And so as they lose estradiol, they become more insulin resistant.
Okay, say that one more time.
So when you are in perimenopause and you're losing estradiol.
So my ovaries are like aging out.
Ovaries are aging.
They're aging out.
Right. You become less sensitive to the insulin your body makes. Because estradiol is very insulin sensitive.
Interesting.
And so we see body composition changes.
Yes. So women that have always been very fit all of a sudden have a lot of abdominal fat.
Yes. Right? We see a shifting of fatty replacement in the abdominal area. And if they don't gain weight, they feel like it's shifted.
Right.
Their body composition has changed. So utilizing things like a DEXA or an in-body scan or a Sika helps us to identify where are they becoming more fatty replaced, but typically it's in that mid-abdominal area.
Interesting.
And a lot of times that's what brings a patient in.
Right.
But we know that if we don't address it, that we have an increased risk for type 2 diabetes later in life.
Yes.
And we were talking a little bit about health span, lifespan, men versus women.
Yeah.
Well, when we look at men and women typically are healthier in general, right? We have less diabetes, less across the board.
I didn't know that.
Premenopausally.
I was going to say I would not guess
premenopausally.
that. Okay.
At menopause, that changes because of these things like insulin resistance,
because
heart
basically
disease.
Our sex hormones go away. Is that
Our
what you're saying?
estradiol, which is very protective in a lot of ways. There's 300 receptors in our body. So it impacts about 12 different body systems.
Wow.
And so when we think about our skin.
Just estradiol? We're not even talking testosterone or progesterone.
Progesterone as well. It has many, but for the purpose of this conversation, really just estradiol. 300 receptors in our body.
For estradiol. 12 systems in our body?
10 to 12 body systems that are impacted, depending on how you group those. But we're thinking about our skin, our lungs, our kidneys, our bones, our muscle, our heart, our brain.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yes, brain. I mean, we see double the amount of dementia in women than we see in men. And so is that because they're living longer and acquiring these? Or there's a researcher, you and I have talked about mental health in women and brain health, but Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who has looked at brain health in women and noticed that there's a shift at midlife that happens that impacts the rates of brain diseases,
neurodegeneration,
glucose metabolism in the brain, and that the brain is looking for estrogen. She has used PET scan imaging to determine what does that activity look like. She's developed an estradiol tracer in the brain.
Wow.
So we are able to measure the activity of the brain.
It's incredible.
In hopes of finding some estradiol to help with things like brain fog, word recall,
verbal memory,
right?
Yes, and for you ladies listening that are not in perimenopause or menopause yet, what I try to explain and what I still experience is just before menses or just before we start our period, that's when estrogen or estradiol really bottoms out along with progesterone. So we feel ditzy. It's like if I'm in the middle of working with a client and I can't find my language, I'm like, gosh, darn it, I should have not worked today because this is not a part of my cycle that like the language part of my brain or the verbal memory is as easily accessed. So estradiol and verbal memory go hand in hand. So
they do.
A lot of women that are brilliant in their reproductive years then I know feel like really ditzy or airheaded or frustrated with their own brain.
And there's a lot of anxiety around that, especially if they've had a relative that's had some sort of a brain disease like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or dementia. And we can't say that HRT prevents yet. Can't say that
it's
yet.
Newer.
But
newer.
There is so much data that points to this shift or this loss of estradiol in midlife that could impact that brain health long term.
So what's interesting, and just to kind of talk out loud about this, is so women are living longer because we have more access to medicine. There are more educated women living longer than ever before. So I remember hearing, I don't know if it was something you'd shared or something on Instagram about how there are more women in medicine than there have ever been before. So now we have more advocacy for women's health than we've ever had before. So women are living longer, and if we're going to live longer, and if we live longer, 100% of us are going to go through perimenopause and menopause.
Yes.
So are all these women saying, hey, if I'm going to live longer, darn it, I want it to be quality of life.
Right.
Right.
And I think, we didn't have research with women. A lot of our research is based on male data.
Yes.
Women were not included in clinical trials until 1993.
What? 1993 was when
women started being included in clinical trials.
Stop.
And so,
it's a whole other podcast.
Right, exactly. Another issue. With the Women's Health Initiative, that was an exciting time. Let's talk a little bit around that.
Okay.
Because
I think
that's an
about this, so tell me about
piece of data.
Okay.
So the Women's Health Initiative was a study by the NIH. They spent $1 billion.
NIH stands for?
National Institutes of Health.
Got it. Okay.
They spent $1 billion on this study to be able to determine how women can age well.
Okay.
They were looking at women's aging. So there was an arm of the study that looked at hormones.
Okay.
And it's what I was taught in school. It was written in my notes. It's what I taught patients for years because it's what we were taught.
Sure.
But what they did is they studied women at the average age of 63. And if you remember, we just said menopause, the average age is 51, 52.
Yes.
So they were studying much older women.
Postmenopausal women, yeah. Okay.
They were using a different form of hormone. So they used synthetic hormones versus bioidentical. So let me explain a little bit about that.
Please do.
Synthetic is, for lack of a better word, man-made.
Yes.
It's conjugated. It's put together by man. Whereas bioidentical is, but it's chemically structured like our own.
Yes.
So when they look at the chemical, if you remember chemistry and the bonds between oxygen and hydrogen and all those fancy things, they look at that chemical structure and make something very identical, body identical,
so
bioidentical.
Is essentially foreign.
Yeah.
Right? It's a foreign.
It's a very different product than what we'd use today is the whole point.
Yep.
And so wrong group of women.
So, so it's postmenopausal women in this study.
Right.
And they're using a synthetic hormone.
Correct.
So not what our body naturally produces.
Right.
Okay, so 2 checks against us here. Okay.
And then, they misreported the data, for lack of a better way of saying that, because they looked at relative versus actual
What
risk.
were they trying to do in the study, Laura?
So they were trying to determine whether hormones were safe for women.
And just implementing, they were just putting women on synthetic hormones just to see what would happen to them?
Well, they had different arms of the study looking at brain health, bone health, heart health. But what they found was in the group that had both estrogen, and again, a synthetic form, and progestin, which is very different than progesterone, they saw one more case of breast cancer per 1,000 women. So it raised the risk of breast cancer by 1 in that arm. Now, in the arm with estrogen only, even the synthetic forms, there was less breast cancer.
Oh,
so 22% less and 40% less mortality in those women that had just estrogen only. But it was really that progestin molecule that's not what we use today.
Yep.
We use the bioidentical progesterone.
Yep.
So they halted the study that stopped early, and they said hormones are not safe for women. They lead to breast cancer.
That's just bad science.
Heart attack and stroke.
That's just bad science.
Which now we've had a reframing around because of that, and we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So it's just important to know the context that we come from when we think about hormone health.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing that because a lot of the time when I mention HRT to my clients or even mentioning it to their providers and teaching my clients to go advocate, they still have that old nuance or that old mindset of this causes cancer.
Right.
Which is what we have found is not to be true.
Right.
And you just debunked it by what you shared.
Right. But it's very hard to change our minds.
Totally.
And
well, yeah, you say cancer and everybody freaks out and thinks death. So it's like, I'm not going there.
Well,
I'm totally shut down
and
to
when
it.
a medical professional, there's something called confirmation bias.
Uh-huh.
It's that we look for things that support our beliefs.
That's right.
And so when something goes against what we've been taught first in our life, so like our first beliefs that we were taught in school around certain things, very hard to change.
It is.
Very hard to see things in a new light.
I see that all the time with psychiatric meds.
So
there's a certain
I'm
class
sure.
that was trained with benzodiazepines are great, and then another class or generation, they're toxic and don't ever use them. So yes, across the lifespan of providers, I can testify, even in psychiatry.
Right, and that's across the board, not just with hormones.
Yeah.
But especially in hormones, we have seen a confirmation bias. And so I feel like that is shifting.
Good.
Now we need to think, okay, what can help women to live and age in a way that brings them health versus being in that poorer health?
Okay.
And so that is the whole focus around ovarian longevity.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring in the menotime testing to make this real relevant and practical, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So you were kind enough to help me facilitate my own test around this.
Yes.
A couple of months ago. So we did some blood work, and I'm going to have you describe that in a minute. And we tested the age of my ovaries according to this new biotechnology, and we found that for me, my ovaries are younger than my actual age.
Which is a win.
Which is
That's
hilarious.
A win,
it's just
Carissa.
funny I'm so thankful. Because I'm like, hey, even if I don't get to have babies, I would like to postpone menopause as long as I can because of everything we're talking about.
Right.
So I would love to talk about, first of all, so for the listeners, this sounds crazy and fun and silly, but you can test the age of your ovaries, and your ovaries could be younger or older than your actual biological age. Is that right?
Correct. It's called an ovarian age gap.
Okay.
So your
let's talk
ovarian age versus what your biological age is.
So the goal is if we can discover how old my ovaries are. For me, they're younger by a couple of years.
Yeah.
Whoop.
Yeah.
And then you and I walked through my labs and this menotime testing, and which is basically new biotechnology.
Correct.
That can predict when I'm going to go into menopause. I think right now the prediction is like 52 for me.
Okay, which is average age.
Okay.
Right.
But I would like to see if we can prolong that. So we walked through the labs and kind of some preventative stuff. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So menotime testing is the first to market ovarian age test that's going to predict time to menopause.
Okay.
And we were fortunate enough to be able to connect with their founder.
Amazing.
And so we have partnered with them to be able to provide this to the community and our patients. And it's very easy to do.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing.
It's super easy.
Yeah. It's literally 3 lab tests.
Unless you hate needles. Yeah.
And then a few questions about your biomarkers.
Yeah.
So menotime testing it's an AI model. So they used 40,000 clinical data points
Amazing. Okay.
across the US and all demographics so that we couldn't say, one area was better than another. And then they ran 100,000 mathematical calculations on the interaction of the biomarkers that they ask you about, like things like sleep, waist circumference, smoking, period regularity. And then we use estradiol, which we've talked a lot about today. FSH, which if you remember earlier in the conversation we talked about, that's a messenger. That's the hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone. It's asking the ovaries to release some estradiol.
Yeah.
So when the ovaries aren't producing estradiol, that message gets louder. So we see FSH go up.
Okay.
in perimenopause and menopause.
So that's the number you look at in labs.
We look at FSH, estradiol.
Like if your FSH is higher, it's usually because it's screaming, hey, I need more, I need more. Got it?
And then another test that's called AMH, and that's anti-Müllerian hormone.
Okay.
It is released from the ovary, and it's a picture or a measure of ovarian reserve. Okay. So it's going to give us an indication around how many small follicles you have available that could potentially you ovulate from.
All right, dumb that down for us.
So let's go back to birth. Let's go back to gestation. Okay. When you're in your mom's womb, you have, I believe it is 20 million follicles at, 6 to 7 at 20 weeks gestation.
Okay.
So I said that backwards. Okay. You have 6 to 7 million follicles.
In my little ovaries?
In your ovaries.
As an
when
infant.
you are 20 weeks old.
That's insane.
It is.
How is that even possible?
So just the miracle of the way you were created.
Creation.
Yes. And so
little baby girls in their little ovaries while they're in utero as fetuses have 6 to 7 million follicles.
Oh, by the time they're born, they've already lost most of those.
Okay.
If you think about ratios, they're down to 1 to 2 million follicles by the time they're born.
Okay.
And then at puberty, usually around 300,000.
Okay.
And then by the time you reach menopause, you're at less than 1,000 follicles.
Okay.
So AMH helps us capture. It's a hormone release.
And what's the purpose of the follicle? What does the follicle do
in the
ovary?
The follicle then can develop and become ovulated. That's where your ovulation stems from. It can release an egg if it gets large enough.
So the follicle releases the eggs?
Yes.
Okay, so we need
it develops
follicles for eggs.
Yes. And so that's your ovarian reserve. So it's helping us to capture, AMH just helps us to capture ovarian reserve. It was looked at.
So it predicts or gives you an idea of how many follicles you have left?
Early follicles. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not as reliable. It's like a one-time test. So it's not as reliable for predicting ovarian age alone.
Okay.
So we don't want to just use AMH. Gotcha. It was discouraged in the past to look at only AMH to determine kind of where someone was in that process because certain things influence it.
Sure.
And so we use that in connection with FSH, estradiol, AMH in this tool, MenoTime, along with those biomarkers, those questions that you got asked, and they look at how those interplay. They look at those connections between that to then predict for you what is your chronological age versus your biological age. So they're looking at the gap. Okay. So, and some people don't have a large gap. Some have more of a gap or are ahead of the curve like you were, Carissa, and they're going to show you traditionally what that trajectory would look like for you on a graph, but then they're also going to show you where you are right now with your ovarian age and what that trajectory looks like, and then show you within a 95% confidence interval of how close you're going to come to determining what time you're going to go through menopause.
Okay. So let's make this, again, I want to keep it real practical. Yeah. Why would a woman want to do this? Why would a woman want... Yeah, two questions. We'll start with why would a woman want to do this? Like, what would be the benefit for a woman investigating this part of her ovarian health?
There's a lot of reasons. Think about why we need ovaries. Well, for reproduction. Okay. For our purposes, we're talking about aging. We're talking about bone, brain, heart, metabolic. We talked about 10 to 12 different body systems that are impacted by that loss of estradiol. So it is your aging predictor.
Got it.
And if we think about heart disease, maybe we want to intervene earlier and look at a coronary artery calcium score. Okay. Maybe we want to do a DEXA earlier. Okay. Maybe we want to think about your brain health.
So if I got the test done and I found that my ovaries were older than my chronological age, that's where I would be concerned about some of these things. Is that right?
Possibly. Okay. Yes. Okay. And then we have to think, well, why? And so this test is going to categorize that for you and tell you, for instance, do you have some metabolic concerns that are a high impact for you in determining your ovarian age? Or do you have like overstimulation of your nervous system?
Yep, stress and anxiety. I mean, all of American women
that can impact our brain and the way our hormones are expressed. Yeah. And therefore maybe recommend for you some supplementation or some lifestyle changes that you could do to potentially impact that. Studies are still needed to know what level each of these interventions would do for a certain person. It's going to be very individualized. Okay. But then we can remeasure your ovarian age. Let's say you had a metabolic concern.
Yeah.
And they're going to recommend for you to change your diet, maybe start a supplement, maybe even do a GLP-1 or a metformin or something like that. Then we can start that process and then recheck your ovarian age 12 months later to see what impact that's had on you.
So let's make that real practical because, again, you use big, beautiful science words. Okay, so I come in, I'm Carissa, I'm 40 years old. I'm not 40 years old, but I'm 40 years old. And I get a lot of abdominal fat. I'm sitting a lot for a living. And my ovarian age is older than I want it to be. I could go through this test with you and look at my sex hormones. I could look at lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, supplementation, and then, if necessary, possible GLP-1 for anti-inflammatory, insulin resistance, etc. And then I implement these things, and then 12 months later, we reassess and see
what impact that's had on your aging process.
Gotcha. So women would want to participate in this to predict their aging. So this would be under the umbrella of preventative medicine. Is that fair? That's what I'm hearing. This is more about prevention.
Yeah, it is about, it's about being able to take action.
Yeah.
And, in the past, perimenopause has been like the waiting room, right? Like we're just kind of waiting to go through menopause.
I think of it as dread. Like for me, I've been dreading it. Like
I'm
as
sure.
I've worked with y'all and I listen to what women are going through, I'm like, oh shit, I do not want to go through this. And my mom had a procedure done, so I can't look to her because we're not the same.
Right.
I know you say that, often if you look at your mom and when she went into menopause or perimenopause, well, that's not relevant for my case. So I've been like, I have no idea. And I haven't had babies. I've never been a smoker. I've never been on hormonal birth control. So I'm thankful for that. But I've had a ton of trauma and a lot of stress. And so for me, I'm worried about my adrenal fatigue and my overtraining earlier in life with CrossFit and high intensity stuff.
Yeah.
That's maybe burned systems out. So I'm worried about the chronic stress and my ovarian health. So it was really helpful for me to come in and do that test to be like, oh, okay, I'm doing better than I thought I was, but there's still more I could do.
Absolutely. There's always a way we can take action, but this gives us specifics around what action to take specific to us in our ovarian age and all of the dynamics that go into that, not just one blood test at one certain time, but it's looking at many different biomarkers and how they interplay.
Okay.
I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
Mitochondria.
Yes.
So mitochondria we learned in elementary
Seventh grade science.
Yeah.
The powerhouse of the
cell. The powerhouse of the cell.
ATP,
that
baby.
Little purple squiggly that you would see in your textbook.
Yes.
So mitochondria, it's thought help to support ovarian function, and it could be the dysfunction in that mitochondria that can primarily lead to ovarian aging.
I didn't know that.
So things that we can do to impact mitochondria.
Mitochondrial dysfunction can lead to ovarian aging?
Yes, because our mitochondria they power our cells. So if we don't have if our mitochondria are impacted,
interesting,
then we're going to age at a faster rate. We don't have what it takes to make certain even hormones that lead to other hormones when our mitochondria are impacted.
And this is every cell in the body has a mitochondrion. Is that right?
Yeah.
So is that where things like NAD plus as a supplement? Isn't NAD plus supposed to be
NAD
something?
plus is a coenzyme that can impact mitochondrial function.
Okay.
So what they're looking at in this test is perhaps you could try some lifestyle interventions, maybe red light therapy, maybe hyperbaric oxygen, maybe coenzyme Q10.
I've started using that after, that was one of the suggestions.
That was one of the suggestions, right?
Yes.
And so those type things are going to impact mitochondria. And we use a lot of those things in our clinic just for overall aging in general, but specifically around the ovary. The ovary has a lot of mitochondria.
I didn't know that.
So when you lose that function in the mitochondria, then it's going to impact the way your ovary ages.
Interesting. Okay, Laura, can somebody in perimenopause do this? And
Absolutely.
Is it worth their while?
Perfect time. Absolutely,
What
the perfect
would make
time.
it worth their while if their ovaries are already like, hey, we're thinking
about
shutting down?
Yeah. Well, the closer you get to menopause, the more accurate this test is going to be in certain biomarkers.
Okay.
But it's just a way then to prepare. Let's say you go into menopause. A much healthier person. You go into menopause or maybe even delay it a little bit,
Gotcha.
So
it's,
perimenopause,
hey, I might need to start doing hormones.
Right.
Here.
We have it is the time to take action in perimenopause.
Got it. Okay.
I tell most of my perimenopausal women, this is the time you've got to start educating yourself and you need to read and research and find out what you believe, because menopause kind of comes at you unexpectedly sometimes.
Okay.
We don't know the last day, of a period. If you're going to go through perimenopause and just have lighter periods or have less periods or have heavier ones, and then suddenly one day that's your last one,
Right.
But with bone health, joint health, we see much more plantar fasciitis, frozen shoulder,
that's all inflammation
in the joints, like frozen shoulder where someone can't lift their arm as well.
Yeah.
These are all impacts of low estradiol and the changes that happen in perimenopause, that if we know and we can, intervene with hormone therapy and certain types of exercises and physical therapy, maybe we can make that a smoother transition.
Got it. So even if a woman's ovaries are shutting down or on their way out, it's still very much so worth their while.
Absolutely.
To look at this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, and not just for your ovaries. I mean, you may continue to go on and go through menopause at the normal age, but you're in a much healthier position. So, for instance, it's not uncommon that a woman comes to see me that may have gained 20 pounds during her menopausal transition.
Sure.
That's a very common complaint.
Yep.
And so think about what comes with weight gain. Then your metabolic dysfunction, blood pressure, cholesterol.
Well, and then psychology. I mean, for me
Mental
as a
health.
sex therapist, it's women don't want to have sex if they don't feel good naked.
Right.
And so body image takes a real hit for women, and they're like, oh, I want to hide, or I'm not feeling it, or I'm not into it. And their husbands are kind of like, where'd you go?
Right.
I mean, I have that all the time.
Exhaustion.
Yeah,
I mean, there was just a study that came out recently that looked at the mental health complaints of perimenopausal women.
Yes.
The top one was exhaustion.
I believe it.
And I remember feeling it,
You did?
And so, yes,
Aw.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
a new level of exhaustion.
Yeah.
And so when you're trying to be, like we talked earlier about that role, that mother, the wife or partner, the
Career woman,
friend,
if you work in a career. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Then being able to function at the best you can function
Yes.
is what our goal is.
Yep.
At any age and any stage.
Amen. I feel like, if I may, you are a perfect example of that. Like, you're
Oh, you're
inspiring.
sweet.
Yes. No, I think you are. I mean, you're beautiful, you're fit, you're brilliant, you're still rocking it.
I'm coming to this podcast more.
That's fine. I'll benefit because of it. But I feel like you're the poster woman for how to do that era well.
Well, that's very kind of you, Carissa.
I mean that.
I think that we all have things, we all have things in ourselves that we know we struggle with.
Sure.
And it doesn't come without trying to put those things into place.
Sure.
Once we have the information.
Yeah. But I feel like as humans, all of us are looking around going, who has this thing figured out?
Oh, you're sweet.
No, seriously. I mean, that's just what we do as humans. That's human psychology, social comparison theory. We're looking around going, do they seem like they know what they're doing? Does she look like she's got it figured out? Okay, she must be doing something right. She knows some things. I need to go see her. I'm for real. That's just human psychology.
That's really kind.
So I think that's why I said at the beginning, you're such a leader in this field, and it's really inspiring. And selfishly, I'm very thankful I'm connected to you.
Well,
because
the feeling is mutual.
Well, thank you. But I want to be able to age well, Lord willing, however many days we're given.
Yeah.
And so being connected to you and optimize you in that preventative health, and y'all are really big on staying ahead of the game with the research and staying up to date as providers, where I feel like so many providers unfortunately get burnt out or exhausted, or they don't do their continuing ed. So people are stuck with old school mindset. And now more than ever, I tell my clients, we have more resources than ever before. There's no reason you cannot feel great. There's no reason you can't treat your mental health, your physical health. Like, we have more resources with the internet and with modern medicine and research than we've ever had access to.
Right.
There's no reason you have to continue to feel like crap.
Right. And if you do, you need to seek someone who will hear that complaint and take it seriously.
Yep.
And I look at it as my job, as I mentioned earlier, to be a lifelong learner.
Yes.
I don't know everything. I don't know all there is to know. But what I do know, I'm going to share.
Amen.
And I want to be a voice for women, but a voice of truth.
You are.
And so, that is a goal of mine personally, is to be able to spread that knowledge, spread the things I learn, share my experiences. And I think as women, we're getting better at sharing experiences and saying, hey, look behind you, look ahead of you, look beside you, that we're all in this together. And that we can never know too much about what may work, because, one thing that works for you may not work for the next person. But being able to really look at women's health in terms of ovarian aging, longevity, being proactive, taking control of your health is definitely our desire at Rebellion Health.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Laura, let me make sure I didn't miss any questions here. Let's see. I think we covered all of this. Is there anything else you would want the listeners to hear from you in terms of ovarian health, lifespan, how to reach health span, how to reach out to anything else you want the listeners to really, you'd want to drive home for the listeners today?
You know, at Rebellion Health, we really seek to, like I said, present the truth to women. And the whole concept around Rebellion Health is that we're fighting a system that really...
Hence the name Rebellion.
Keeps us sick.
Yeah.
But the purpose of being a rebel is to rise up. Rise up and build. And so rise up and build for yourself and those around you a legacy that then you can give to your daughter and say, you know, you can know this about your health.
Amen.
You can impact and make a decision that positively impacts your health versus keeps you in a system that is not pro-health and maybe you stay sicker. And so we can change the trajectory of our longevity. We don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know if we'll be here tomorrow.
That's right.
But for today, we can make the best decision we know with the information we have.
Yes.
And so that's my goal, is to give you that, you know, in all of our listeners that.
Okay. So another question. So I have listeners all over the U.S. and actually in other countries. So if people wanted to pursue this testing and they don't live in Chattanooga, what could they go back and talk to their provider about it? Like, what would be the next steps for a listener who is interested in this?
They can look for a partner with Menotime.
Menotime. Menotime.
Yes. Okay. It is from Timeless Biotech.
Okay. Timeless Biotech.
And they have a website where you can join a wait list to have the testing done.
Okay.
Or you can look for practices like ours at Optimize You that partner with Timeless Biotech to offer it to their patients.
Okay.
And so...
so they would need to partner with... they would need to reach out to a partner of the Timeless Biotech.
Or go directly to the website and join the wait list.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. And if you're local to Chattanooga, women can come see you at Optimize You.
Absolutely. Or any of our providers.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Okay. And again, y'all, it was super painless unless you have a phobia of needles, then you can come work with me and we'll walk you through the phobia and get you in. But it's like blood draw, filling out... answering some questions, and then the biotechnology and the AI basically does all the work, and they meet with the provider and talk through.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's really important to remember is that we can do something about the things we know.
Amen.
But if we don't know, then it may not change our trajectory. And so having the knowledge and the ability to have that knowledge and take actionable steps towards our health is what this test offers us.
I love it. Okay. Well, y'all, thank you. I wish you could give a round of applause online or wherever you're listening to Miss Laura Chastain. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Krista.
This was awesome. I'm excited.
Been an honor.
Yes. Well, thank you. Happy birthday again.
Thank you.
Yes. And if y'all have any questions, Laura, where can they find you? What's the best way to find you if women want to reach out and talk to you
so you
themselves?
can find me at optimizeyoucenters.com
Okay.
or at any of the area Optimize You locations.
Awesome.
Or at Rebellion Health, which is an educational platform that we offer to our patients.
Awesome. And y'all, I will include that in the bio or the link. If this is YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Instagram or Facebook, I'll be sure to include her contact info as well. Thank you, Laura, so much. It was awesome to have you.
It's a pleasure.